Hello, and welcome to the Sunday morning Salem Lutheran Church Bible study. We are glad you're here. If you'd like to join us in this Zoom session, please visit slcw.org and click the link to join the group. We'll be getting started in just a moment.
Well, good morning. Good morning and welcome on this. I've been told it's kind of windy outside day in Worcester, Ohio. Other than that, it's pretty nice. A little chilly, but other than that, it's pretty nice. Anyways, today we are discussing Psalm 132. And this psalm is another one of the Psalms of Ascent that we've been studying. We're 15 of them, and we're getting towards the end. I think we got maybe a couple left. Anyways, the Psalms of Ascent were Psalms that were, I'm going to sneeze again. Maybe not. I guess not. Oh, no, here it comes. Anyway, Psalms of Ascent, as we mentioned before, were Psalms that the pilgrims coming to Jerusalem would sing on their way to Jerusalem. They would come for pilgrimages on the 3 high holy days that we've mentioned before, like Passover and Tabernacles, Pentecost. Anyways, these were psalms that they would sing on their way. And Psalm 132, my commentary, I'm just going to read it to you. It says, it has no author associated with it in the title. Some believe that David was the author, and some believe it was written after the exile. Some believe that it was written by Solomon. And one commentator says that Psalm 132 are quoted in 2 Chronicles as part of Solomon's prayer at the dedication of the temple. The psalm probably dates from Solomon's reign, even though the title does not identify it as Solomon's psalm. So do what you want with it. The psalm really begins with talking about David's heart for the house of God. Remember, it was David's desire that he build a temple on Mount Zion to God. That never happened during his reign. God forbade David from building the temple because of his sin with Bathsheba, and it was up to Solomon ultimately to build the temple. But during the time of David, the Ark of the Covenant, which had been at Shiloh in the tabernacle, and for those who don't know what the tabernacle was, that was the tent kind of enclosure that the Israelites had constructed during their wanderings in the wilderness, where they would keep the Ark of the Covenant when they camped. And when they eventually came into the Promised Land, Palestine, they put the tabernacle up permanently in a place called Shiloh. And it was during David's reign that he finally took the tabernacle down in Shiloh, had it transported to Mount Zion along with the Ark of the Covenant, and there it was placed on Mount Zion and remained until Solomon built the Holy Temple. And so the promise that David had made is that he would build the temple, but as I said, he was not allowed to do that until Solomon came along. And that temple stood until the time of their captivity by Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians. The temple was then destroyed. It was then rebuilt after their coming back to Jerusalem eventually under King, the name escapes me, Herod. Herod built the temple. Of course, that one was then destroyed by the Romans when they conquered Jerusalem during a rebellion, and only one part of that temple of Herod is still standing. We refer to that as the Wailing Wall. So if you know what the Wailing Wall is and have seen pictures of it, that was from Herod's temple. That was the temple that was standing when Jesus was alive and came to Jerusalem. But anyways, the psalm begins by talking about David's heart for the house of God. And so if you're at Psalm 132, verse 1 begins with, Lord, remember David and all his afflictions. It talks about David. What were David's afflictions? Well, there were many. And one commentator kind of lists them all. What were his afflictions? Well, he was despised and criticized by his family, we're told. He was placed in many life and death struggles. He was accused of treason and treachery by King Saul when he was one of the generals in Saul's army. He was attacked by the connected, powerful, and the ruthless people. He lived many years as a fugitive, a wanted man. We're told that when Saul was still king, he hunted David down because he saw David as a threat to his kingship. He lived many years. He had a family, home, friends, and career taken from him. He experienced a significant season of backsliding when he turned from God. He was accepted as king only reluctantly. He faced many enemies in battle through many years. David had to fight many wars and many battles to solidify his kingdom. He was openly criticized and despised even by his own wife. Remember, his primary wife was a girl named Michal. He suffered because of his own sins and scandals, specifically the Bathsheba incident. He endured great conflict and problems among his own children. We're told at one point he had many children from different wives, and one of his sons raped his stepsister, and as a result of that, the brother of the stepsister killed the brother who had raped his stepsister. So he had that going on. He suffered a coup staged by his own son. We talked about that last time, I believe, about Absalom, who raised up an army and went to do battle against his own father. He was openly despised and criticized by some of his subjects. So we can go on and on with all the different things. We sometimes think of David as living a rather peaceful life and having a prosperous and peaceful kingdom, but he suffered a lot of things during his lifetime. And I suppose as we list that, we could probably list our own afflictions. As I'm mentioning that, you could probably sit back and think about some of the problems you've had, maybe problems financial, or maybe problems health-wise, or maybe problems with family members, or go on and on and on, different type of afflictions that you might list that you've had, things that you've had to deal with. So you can kind of empathize with David and all the issues and all the problems he had. But in spite of that, David did try mainly to remain faithful to God. And because of that, he swore to God, we're told in this psalm. He swore to the Lord that he would build him a permanent residence, a permanent home. And so that's why the psalm says, until I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling place for the mighty one of Jacob. So his desire was always to build that holy temple to God, build a place where God could dwell. And so he made that pledge. In fact, the psalm talks about how intent he was in that. It goes on to say, surely I will not go into the chamber of my house or go up to the comfort of my bed. I will not give sleep to my eyes or slumber to my eyelids until I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling place for the mighty one of Jacob. So you hear the intention or the intense desire that David had to build a holy place for God, build a place for God to dwell permanently. And of course, as the pilgrims would come to Jerusalem, Mount Zion was this high plateau in the middle of the city of Jerusalem, and the temple was built on there. So as you approach the city of Jerusalem, you could look beyond the walls. You could see on this high hill in the middle of the city, this temple, this beautiful temple of Solomon rising up. And so it was just this glorious, glorious scene of seeing finally the place where God was dwelling. And so it goes on to talk about how David had this wonderful desire to do this. He says, behold, in verse 6, behold, we heard of it in Ephrathah. We found it in the fields of the woods. Let us go into his tabernacle. Let us worship at his footstool. Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you and the ark of your strength, making reference to the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was a symbol of God's presence among the people of Israel. Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you and the ark of your strength. Let your priests be clothed with righteousness, and let your saints shout for joy. Some people think that this psalm was written actually by David, as we mentioned before, and that it was used when they brought the Ark of the Covenant from Shiloh into Jerusalem. So if that's the case, these verses kind of give a reference to that. You can almost picture the solemn procession of the Ark of the Covenant being brought from Shiloh down the road up to Jerusalem and finally up to the Mount of Zion. And this grateful procession with people playing instruments, cymbals and trumpets blasting, people lined on the street as the Ark of the Covenant was carried by the Levites up through the city of Jerusalem in a solemn procession, up to the Mount of Zion, up to where the tabernacle had been constructed. A wonderful, wonderful day of celebration. And so I guess that talks about the importance of worship. And so the question that always came to my mind when I read this over was, why don't people go to church anymore? That's a really good question, because I think we say, well, we're a Christian nation, people go to church. Well, the last statistic I saw showed that about 10% of the people in this country actually are in church on an average Sunday. Now that may surprise some of you, 1 out of every 10 people. But all you have to do is drive past the golf courses, or in Worcester, go up to the mall where Walmart is, or where Myers is, and see the parking lot full. Those parking lots are always full on Sunday. Churches, no, not so much. Not so much. Why don't people go to church? Well, when I would ask people who weren't coming to church at Zion, which is my last parish that I served at, I would always get the same answer. Well, I don't get anything out of worship. I don't get anything out of church. And it always brings us to the question of, what is the purpose of church? Why do we go to church? And as much as I would always hope when I planned a worship service that people would get something out of it, that was not the primary purpose of worship. The primary purpose of worship is to come together as the people of God and to give thanks and praise to God, who has been so gracious and wonderful to us during the week. Why do we go to church? We go to church to worship God, to give thanks to God. Now, as I said, I always hope that people would get something out of worship. I always hope that my sermon would be meaningful and touch people's lives where they were. But I find that people still say, well, I should get some more out of it. And that's why if you look around at the churches that are growing, they're so much into what I call entertainment worship. Worship is all about fun, about providing music. I remember after my wife passed away and after I had retired from Zion, I did spend some time visiting other churches and some of the popular churches here in Worcester even. And the thing I discovered, I didn't feel like I was really worshiping. I felt like I was being entertained. It was all about the music and the bands and that kind of thing. And I thought, is that really what worship is about? And worship is about worshiping God, not about being entertained, not about being amused by the worship service. And yet those are the churches that are growing, the ones that entertain people on a Sunday morning, provide them with bands and choirs and singing and dancing. Well, that's not what worship is about. Worship is about us coming together once a week and saying thank you to God for all the blessings that God gives us. All during the week, God blesses us in so many different ways, with the lives we have, with the families we enjoy, with the children we have, with all the blessings of work and all the things that our income provides, with all which are gifts that flow freely from God. And so Sunday morning is a chance for us to gather together and to say, thank you. Thank you, God, for all the blessings that I have received. But a lot of people don't see it that way. And I think that's why church is kind of falling into disuse. So that's a shame. But hopefully, maybe someday there'll be a revival of the church. But the important thing I would always ask about church is church, is worshiping, is it the center of our life? It should be. It was for David. For David, worshiping God at the temple, at the tabernacle, with the Ark of the Covenant was the center of his life. That's what it should be for us. When Saturday comes along, it shouldn't be, I guess we got to go to church tomorrow. No, it should be, I get to go to church tomorrow. I get to go be with my fellow Christians and worship God. I get to go to church. Church should be the center of our lives. It should be that from which we gain strength for the week that is to come. I go to church on Sunday morning to be with God's people, to receive strength from God for the days that lie ahead. For no matter what happens on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, I know that God's presence is with me. That's what worship does. It gives us this belief that no matter what tomorrow brings, it always brings God. God is always with us. Lo, I am with you always, the New Testament says, even until the end of the ages. Lo, I am with you. So why do we go to church? To draw strength from God, to be loved by God, to be shown that no matter what tomorrow brings, it always brings the blessings, the courage, and the strength of God. And so that's why we hear him talking about how this is the most important thing to him. Behold, we heard of it in Ephrathah. We found it in the fields of the woods. Let us go into his tabernacle. Let us worship at his footstool. Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you and the ark of your strength. Let your priests be clothed with righteousness, and let your saints shout for joy. It also talks about the high regard that the priests should be held in, because they are the ones that point us to God. Which, as a former pastor, as a retired pastor, I shouldn't say former pastor, as a retired pastor, I was always amazed when I got to a church, just sometimes, well, I would always say that when you first arrive at a church, the people put you up on a pedestal. Then they spend the rest of your time at that church trying to pull you down from it. And there's a lot of truth to that. And yet the psalmist talks about how we should hold pastors in high regard because they are called by God. That's the Lutheran view. Pastors are called by God. Churches don't hire pastors. They are called. And God is the one who does the calling. God is the one who leads the people of the church to select a certain man to come and lead them and to point them to God. And so pastors should be held in high regard. Pastors should be lifted up, prayed for, cherished at all times. And that's what this psalm talks about. Let your priests be clothed with righteousness, and let your saints shout for joy. The pastor is the one who is ordained by God to lead the people into the way of God. And so that's what this psalm talks about. I guess I'm a little prejudiced there as a former pastor, saying that that's how we should hold our pastors in such high regard. Anyways. But then the psalm goes on. For your servant David's sake, do not turn away the face of your anointed. For your servant David's sake. God's promise there is that he would not forsake the sons of David, that they would always be close to his heart. Do not turn away the face of your anointed. Who is the anointed one? This is a messianic prophecy, as we call them. Messianic means it refers to the anointed one coming from God, the chosen one, the Christos in Greek, the anointed one of God. That's what the name Christ means. You know, Christ was not his name. I always thought that a lot of people would always thought if they got to Jerusalem or to Nazareth, they would see a house there with a mailbox, and on it would say the Christ family. You know, no, that wasn't his name. His name wasn't Jesus Christ. He was Jesus the Christ. If he had a name, his name would have been Jesus ben Yosef, the son of Joseph, or Jesus of Nazareth. They would always designate a person by his location or his profession. Sometimes he'd be referred to as Jesus the carpenter's son. So those were the ways in which his name, but his title was, he was the Christos, the Christ. And Christ means the anointed one of God, the one promised by God, the Messiah. And so he says in this psalm, do not turn away the face of your anointed. Let Christ always have his face turned to us. Let him be always the one that we are close to, the anointed one of God. I'm just looking at my time to make sure I still have time to go on with the rest of the psalm. Do not turn away the face of your anointed. Always, he says, have the favor of God pointed towards me. And so then we go on in verse 11 with God's promise to David. The Lord has sworn in truth to David. He will not turn from it. I will set upon your throne the fruit of your body. If your sons will keep my covenant and my testimony which I shall teach them. Their sons shall also sit upon your throne forevermore. The promise of God that he will be their God and they will be his people. This was a promise God made at Mount Sinai to the people of Israel. But now the promise goes beyond. If you remember at Mount Sinai, the promise was, I will be your God and you shall be my people. I will be your God. I will shine my face upon you. The anointed one will come to redeem you. I will be your God and you shall always be my people. And now that promise turns beyond just the Israelites, beyond just the Jews, to all the world. We are his children. We are his people. And so he will not turn, and he will always be with us. The anointed one of God will shine upon us. The promise of God will be with us. And again, that is a great consolation for me and for you, I think, because it's
Yes.
a promise to us that no matter what life brings, no matter what happens in our lives, God's promise is that he is with us. Are you facing problems? Are you facing troubles? God is with you. Lo, I am with you until the end of the ages. The world will cease. The presence of the earth will stop. The earth will stop spinning on its axis before my love dwells and leaves you. Look at the stars of the sky, the promise of God is. As long as the stars are twinkling in the sky, as long as the earth revolves on its axis, as long as the sun is in the sky and the moon in the sky at night, that is how long God's love and God's promises are with you. And why is that? For the Lord has chosen Zion. We are Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling place. This is my resting place forever, among you, among the people of God. Here I will dwell, for I have desired it. I will abundantly bless her provision. I will satisfy her poor with bread. God will bless the people of Israel. So the psalm is not just referring to God's presence at Mount Zion in the temple, at the Ark of the Covenant. He's referring to God's presence in this world, that God is here with us. Even though at times it seems like the world has gone crazy, that we seem self-intent upon destroying ourselves and destroying this world, God's promise is that that will not happen. God's promise is that I will dwell among the people of Israel. I will dwell among the people of this land. I will dwell with you. And so God's promise to you is that wherever you are, no matter what's going on in your life, God's promise is that he will be there with you, that he will oversee your life, and that his promises will last forever. And then we get to the conclusion of the psalm. And he continues his promise. I will also clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints shall shout aloud for joy. There I will make the horn of David grow. I will prepare a lamp for my anointed. His enemies I will clothe with shame, but upon himself his crown shall flourish. So that the promise there is that no matter what happens in our life, God is going to have the ultimate victory. When you feel like life is crushing you down upon you, and that you have lost everything, and that everything is emptiness, God says, no, 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 no. That is not the case. I will clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints shall shout aloud for joy. There I will make the horn of David grow. I will prepare a lamp for my anointed. So even when things seem bleak, even when you think this world has gone crazy, even when you think your life has become just a trash heap, God says, no, 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 no. I am with you. I will be with you forever. I will prepare a lamp for my anointed. His enemies I will clothe with shame, but upon himself his crown shall flourish. That ultimately the victory of God is assured, that ultimately we will win. In spite of what we think is going on in our lives, in spite of what is happening around us, God's promise is that he will be with us now and forever. I am always reminded of Paul's words, when he said, for I've been persuaded that nothing ever separates us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. Not height, not depth, not powers, not principalities, nothing in all of creation shall ever separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. And so it's the promise of God that no matter what comes, no matter what happens, God's promise is there. And this is what the psalm refers to. It is a psalm of rejoicing, of joy. The temple is a constant reminder to us of God's presence. And God's presence is always with us. We will not be overcome. We will not be destroyed. Nothing can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. And so we conclude the psalm, and I hope you found comfort in that. If you're going through some difficult times right now, rest assured that if you turn around quickly, you will bump into God, because he is beside you and with you and will give you the ultimate victory and joy. And with that, I turn to Tim and say, hey, Tim, what's going on at Salem this week?
Well, thank you, Pastor. The normal things are happening this week, but there are a few announcements that I think that are really important to notice or to make note of. First, Pastor Nathan had wanted to make our congregation more welcoming to the community, and he had a great idea. He wanted to establish a rock band, and he's going to be leading this rock band as our lead singer and bass player, and we are going to start that process in January to give us enough time to practice and get everything ready and rolling. We want to rock in to Jesus, as he put it. So we're good there. The next message is about Sunday worship every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. That is when the pastor will put on his leather pants and rock out. So join us for that. After worship, we have fellowship. And that is where we get together and have a good chat, have some good coffee, have some good treats, and good conversation. On Monday nights, we continue with our NFL Monday night, which is the Nourishment, Fellowship, and Learning Monday night. The Nourishment and Fellowship starts at 6 o'clock with a hot meal. And from 7 o'clock until we break, we watch an episode of the Chosen series and discuss it in detail. This Wednesday, we have another session of our Lenten Bible study, which happens at 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. Join us via our Zoom link on our slcw.org website, where you can come and learn a little bit about why we're reading the Bible. We're trying to read the Bible from cover to cover this year, and get a glimpse into which method you might want to take, and the issues that might be confronted as we read the Bible. These are the things we're discussing. We're not actually getting into the reading of the Bible yet. The goal is to have the entire Bible read by Easter Sunday next year. So we have a little bit of time to get started, and we're preparing. Now, once we're done with the Lenten season, we're going to be moving this to a Friday night, Friday at 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock, not sure which. But that is going to be the new time for kind of a follow-up session to encourage, answer questions, ask questions, and discuss the things that we've read in the previous week, just as a support mechanism so that we can keep going and help each other be held accountable toward this process and the plan of reading the Bible from cover to cover. So join us on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. for the process or preparation of the process for reading the entire Bible. Next Sunday at 9 a.m., of course, we have Bible study with Pastor Nathan, and again at 10 o'clock, our worship. But one other thing I wanted to make mention of is our congregational meeting that was scheduled. It's a special congregational meeting for March 22nd. That will follow our worship, and then following the meeting, which is only one item on the agenda, which is accepting a contract for the repair of the tower and funding of that tower. And then we'll have a fellowship potluck. So join us on the 22nd of March for that event. Of course, we then have Palm Sunday coming up on the 29th of March. So mark your calendars, start the preparations. Holy Week starts the 29th. We'd love to have you. Join us for all the events during that week, which are Palm Sunday on the 29th, Good Friday on the 3rd, Easter Sunday on the 5th. We'd love to have you for all of those services and worship programs and bring in the Easter season together. So I think that's all I have. We do have Wednesday women's group this coming week. This is the first week of March, and Wednesday women's group will be happening at Bueller's downtown. So join the women of Salem there. Am I missing anything?
Nope, I don't think so. Sounds exciting. Well, if we're gonna rock it out, I have a suggestion for a hymn. I don't know if this hymn is in our hymnal, so we can actually sing it in church. But I've been fascinated with a hymn I've been hearing lately called "Christ Be Our Light." I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I believe we've sung it before.
I would love to see us rock out with that song. It's become very meaningful to me lately.
Okay.
Anyways, putting my word in for that. Well, anyways, thank you very much, Tim. Looks like we have a lot of exciting things happening, and I hope you out there will join us for all or some of them. Anyways, until next week, when we'll be discussing Psalm 133, we're getting to the end of the Psalms of Ascent. In fact, we're actually getting towards the end of the book of Psalms. We only have about 17 more Psalms left in the book of Psalms. So, going to have to figure out something else to do in about 3 months. Anyways, until next week, when we will join you all again, God's blessings be with you. May his peace shower itself down upon you. May he keep you in his love. And as always, may he keep you smiling until we meet again. God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. I feel the heat.
Not even on. You feel the heat off the wall there,
Oh,
right?
it must be coming from the wall.